It's very, very forgiving to new players. And the reason why is because this deck is very good at producing strong threats ahead of curve, and it also has a pretty reasonable removal package and a lot of interaction to help set up some favorable trades in combat. So, quick overview of the deck before we jump into the games. So, your early game, you have a couple pieces of interaction to help set up some favorable trades. Sometimes it's worth hanging on to an Elixir of Iron depending on what you're playing against so that you can save an Ash or a bigger threat from a piece of removal. Omen Hawk, I love this card. In my opinion, the best one drop in the game. He has one job, and that one job is to make everything else in the deck bigger. And then if it blocks damage after that, so if it's saying, hey, I'm gonna make your top two things bigger, block, you gain X life, that's not a bad card. Sentry and Icebell Archer are two of the best 2-drops. So Sentry, it's really interesting. A lot of new players don't understand the value and power of cards like this. So you read it, it says, okay, it's a 2-cost, 2/1, when it dies, draw a card. But what it actually says is, hey, I'm gonna 2-for-1 the opponent. So typically it trades well early game in combat and draws you a card on top of that. In the matchups where you need to be a little bit more aggressive, an early Sentry backed by an Icebell or even a Glory Seeker can start getting through for damage to put pressure on your War Mother ramp and your greedy A-Soul decks. So you do have a package that can get underneath the opponent as well. Now, Glory Seeker. Okay, so let's talk about this card real quick. Glory Seeker is just an incredible card. So one, it's a 5/1 for 2. Against most decks, you'd be shocked, especially in the environment where people are playing all of these greedy ramp decks and these slow Dirtle, Trundle decks, right? You'd be shocked how often you drop a Glory Seeker on your opponent's at the end of your opponent's turn on turn 2, and then open and they just take 5, right? I mean, it's extremely powerful. Late game, that 5 toughness plus challenger chews up most champions, right? The only champion that it misses that I wish it hit was Trundle, because I hate that card. That's a whole different conversation. Next we have Trapper, and I've gone back and forth in this card. When I first started playing it was hard for me to value it appropriately, and the reason why was because it's 3 for a 3/3 body, right? And the whole point of the deck is to play very powerful threats on curve. Trapper is designed to help you transition from the early game to the mid game, because what happens is you play a Trapper. Trapper in and of itself presents a reasonable threat, but most often what happens with Trapper is it trades for one of your opponent's bigger early drops. Then next turn or the turn after, you draw a 1-cost 5/5. Yeah, that's 1. That's 5. And that's 5. So you draw a 1-cost 5/5, and then you have a double spell turn. And what happens is it allows you to swing the control of the board in your favor. Now, if your next drop is an Ash, then you have a situation where your opponent cannot block favorably. I'll get into Ash here in a bit. Next card, Culling Strike. All around, just great removal. It hits most champions. Specifically, a well-timed Culling Strike can take out a Lee Sin or a Lulu. It hits, let's see. this is important. I want to go over this real quick. So it hits Teemo, hits Diana, hits Elise, hits Lucian, hits Ez, hits Fiora, hits Callista, hits Katarina, hits Miss Fortune, right? I mean, you have to get into the 4 drops before you find champions that it doesn't hit. And even then, it hits quite a few of the 4 drops as well, right? So, Culling Strike, very good, as is. But now here's the trick with Culling Strike. This deck has a mechanic in it called Frostbite, right? And what Frostbite does is it lowers a unit's power to 0, right? Making it an eligible target for Culling Strike. Again, great synergy with what the deck is doing. Vital. Hey, what's up, Mankey? I thought you were coming on later. I wasn't expecting you now. What's up? Welcome to the stream. Appreciate you stopping by. We're just reviewing Ashe Sedge real quick, and then we're going to jump into some games. But yeah. Now, Ashe. By far my favorite champion in the game. It's a 4-cost 5/3, right? That Frostbite's on attack. Now, this deck is really pressuring your opponent's board in 2 different ways. What happens is you start playing very powerful units ahead of curve, right? Hey, no problem. Hey, hang out as long as you like, Mankey. I'm just happy you stopped by. So you're playing units ahead of curve. But then the units they are playing can't trade favorably because you're frostbiting their units. Now, here's the other thing. Ashe is the champion of the deck, by the way. But the other thing is, in her level form, she allows you to lock the board late game and swing for lethal. Typically, when I'm not just swinging out with guys with 5/5s and bigger, I'm locking a board with Ashe and closing out a game. Now, Babbling Jerk, so a solid 3/3 that draws one of your 5-drops. Notably, the only thing can hit before you start buffing things in your deck is Ashe, Glory Seeker, Hearthguard, or Sedge. So it's going to draw something you want. Now, Hearthguard. So Hearthguard is a phenomenal card in this deck, right? So what Hearthguard does is it's a 5/5 for 5. So he's a big boy, right? But then it makes everything else in your deck, everything, bigger by 1 more. And so remember that early game package? What will happen after a couple Omen Hawks or a pair of Hearthguards is you start getting very dangerous Glory Seekers, Icefell Archers, and Sentries. Harsh Winds, part of that Frostbite package that we talked about before. It's a great gotcha card. I don't know why people don't see it coming when you play these regions, but they don't see it coming. Notably, it's a burst spell, which makes it difficult for your opponent to react to it. Reckoning, great for sweeping out those aggro decks. This thing farms scouts. For any viewers out there who are having trouble with scouts, aggro spiders, anything like that, this solves that problem. Now it's a little slow. You still have to play into your early game so that you don't die to their attacks on 1, 2, and 3. But man, does this just solve problems. And then rounding us out here, we have our second champion, Sedge. Now, Sedge, a lot of people have tried changing the champion in the deck. Here's the thing about Sedge. If she wasn't a champion, in this deck with what it's doing, if she was just a 5/6 unit with Overwhelm that caused Frostbite on play and made a unit vulnerable, it'd be a 3-off, right? Like not even a question. But for some reason, I find that a lot of players mess with this formula because they want a champion that is going to level easy. Sedge very rarely levels. If she does, you're super late in the game. That said, her level form can help you close out a game. Her level form says that the first time your opponent takes damage each round, it frostbites their entire board. So it works. I find that most games, if I'm playing a leveled Sedge, the game's gone a little bit longer than I wanted it to, and I'm in trouble. That's what's happening. All right. So that's a quick overview of the deck. Mackie, any feedback on that? That's my assessment. And, you know, my word isn't everything on the deck, but I like it. For newer players, this deck is going to comfortably get you from bronze to gold. Not a problem. You start running into, you're scared of Sedge. A lot of people are scared of Sedge, but Sedge doesn't level in this deck. Oh, there we go. Yeah, Sedge doesn't level in this deck very rarely. Like, you're probably winning against Ashe Sedge if you see a level Sedge. Yeah. You're scared of Ashe when I play C. Do you primarily play Deep? So Deep holds a special place in my heart. I love that deck. It doesn't feel good since the last set release because back then Deep was one of the biggest things you could be doing. And now these Asol Trundle decks just kind of go over the top of you. All right, so opponent on a Leona Soul, looks like probably mid-range or ramp. I want a little bit more early game here. Reckoning may not be live here. Definitely want to pitch that. The Ashe, I'll natural draw it later. So I'll just hang on to the trap. Oh, a card I forgot to cover. Assessor helps you create card advantage with all of your large dudes. As you're controlling the board, trading better than your opponent, the only thing that feels worse is then you reload your hand. See, it's opponent's attack step. I'm actually going to, I can choose between the Omen Hawk and the Glory Seeker. I'm going to play the Glory Seeker and let's see if it goes just how it did in the instructional part here, and I get to open and get through the 5. Oh, that's fine. Did not go as planned, chat. Did not go as planned. How do we want to play this? So I'm thinking.
I need just a moment.
You see how opponent responds? He'll probably play the 1-2. Yep. Now, I don't have very many good targets for Brittle Steel, so I am gonna attack and get this off the board.
For glory, you're mine.
An opponent's archetype, his threats get very big very quickly, and so I really just want to maintain board position and try and go bigger, faster, but I also want to get a little wide. Since he's playing a Leona variant, I probably don't have to worry about things like Avalanche. He could be on it, but that would be odd. That would be a bit of a non-bow. That said, we're still at Diamond, so you do see people run non-bows for some reason. Okay, so this Assessor is going to be super live next turn. Very excited. Can't wait. And this Open is going to be very good. This Open is going to be very good, chat.
I'll cut them apart. You are mine.
Now, one issue that I've had, and if anybody out there knows the answer, is I've always had trouble telling which unit Ashe is going to frostbite. So I've had to start using the eye a little bit more. To newer players, if you're not using this, use it. It will save you so much heartache, right? So yeah, now that's a pretty good turn. But the problem is opponents going to go big here very quickly. Yeah, that was a good turn. That makes it all worth the challenge.
Joke debate.
All right. So opponent has a full hand. So card advantage is a thing. It's not as big a thing as it is in some other games. So for those of you who play Magic out there, in Magic, you can only play creatures and certain spells, most spells actually, on your turn, right? So the boards don't get clogged anywhere near as quick. In this game, however, playing to and controlling the board is huge.
What did we catch?
If this assessor gets to draw me 4 cards, hey chat. Omenhawk, you had one job. Thank you for your service.
Few earn the right to call themselves Trifarian.
That felt pretty good. Opponent concedes to card draw, chat. Opponent concedes to card draw.
The war is over. Now we rebuild.